it's art time, and I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be learning 3 basic watercolor techniques. These are perfect for brand new beginners, teachers for elementary students, or just people who'd like to learn more about watercolor. So here's your list of supplies. Go ahead and gather what you need, and then we'll get rolling. Awesome. All right, so now that you have your supplies, hopefully you've checked out our video on Introduction to Watercolor, how to paint, and what supplies that you'll need. We're going to build on that today, and we're going to learn 3 basic watercolor techniques that you can use to start painting. So let's get started. I'm going to start with a small sheet of watercolor paper. You don't need a full sheet for this. You can cut it into smaller sections because we're only going to be learning 3 basic techniques today. So once you've got your watercolor paper, your watercolor, your water, a brush, and some paper towels, and a pencil, we'll get started. I like to start with my paper, and since we're learning 3 techniques, we're just going to generally break this into 3 sections. They don't have to be equal or perfect. We just want to give you a place to work. Our first technique that we're going to learn together is our super duper basic watercolor technique that everything else builds off of. We call this technique a wash. W-A-S-H. Same as washing your clothes, but just watercolor. So we're going to start with a wet brush. Did I say wet brush or dry brush? Wet brush. And of course, we're going to remember to wipe off our extra water on the side. You're going to pick a pigment, any pigment, except for I maybe wouldn't choose white. And we're going to swirl about 3 times. I'm just going to roll with blue. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And we're going to paint. And that's pretty much it. That's your wash. Easy as pie, right? Again, friendly reminder, if you want it lighter, you can add water to make it lighter. If you want it darker, rinse your brush. Swirl it in. We're going to swirl a couple more times. We're going to bring it up to 5, and that will make it darker. So go ahead, if you haven't already, grab your brush, wipe off your extra water, swirl, and paint. I'll be here when you're ready for the next technique. All right, so our first technique again, super basic, called a wash. Let's say this is good for 1 color, just flat. Let's say we want to take 2 colors and we want to mix them together. So anytime you want to mix colors, water's going to be your friend. Anytime water touches water, it's going to mix. So we call this technique, when you have 2 colors mixing together, wet on wet. Let's go ahead and label your paper. Again, give you a guess. Do you think we're working with a wet brush or dry brush here? All right, so let's keep this as simple as possible. We're going to start with a wash. So let's think, okay, how do we do a wash? We start with a wet brush. We're going to swirl our pigment. How many times? Let's just say 3. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to paint our wash down. Now, I want my pigment darker, so what am I going to do? You're right, we're going to swirl a few extra times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I like to start with putting down a wash. Okay, once your color is down, we're going to rinse your brush. Again, we don't want to pollute colors. You're going to pick your second color. So you always start with the light color, and then we'll add in your darker color. So let's just say I want to add in, I don't know, we'll just choose red. So same thing, 1, 2, 3. So you can do this a couple different ways. If you want, you can put it right on top of your other one. And if you have enough water, your colors will start to blend. Now, I purposely didn't put a whole lot of water in to show you what's going to happen and how to fix it. So let's say I didn't use quite enough water. It's going to start to slowly blend here. If it's taking too much time, we're just going to take, you can either grab your brush and add more water with the same pigment, or you can just take a wet brush and run over the surface where those 2 colors meet, and you will start to see those 2 colors start to blend together. Right? So anytime you have wet touches wet, it's going to blend, right? And you can even, if you want to get really fancy, add a 3rd color here. So maybe you take, I don't know, we'll just run with a different orange. We'll stick with some warm colors. Go right on top here. Again, it's going to start to blend. If it's going too slow for you, you can just take a wet brush and just kind of blend along the seam here. And your colors should start to blend together. Perfect. So anytime wet touches wet, it's going to blend. Go ahead and start with your lighter color brush. Or your lighter... Go ahead and start with your lighter color paint. Put down a wash. Rinse your brush, pick your other color, and paint on top. If it's not blending fast enough, means you need a little bit more water, you can run right on top and watch it blend. Go ahead and do that now. Awesome, welcome back. So we have your wash, we have our wet on wet. Let's say we have two colors that we want to put on here, but we don't want them to blend, but you want to work while it's still fresh. For this technique, we're going to use dry on top of wet. To simplify, especially if you're teaching elementary, I just like to call it a dry brush. So we're going to start same as we have before with our wash to put down our base of color, and then we're going to go dry on top with a dry brush and paint, and your colors shouldn't mix. So again, if I'm putting down a wash, do I start with a wet brush or a dry brush? You're right, wet brush. So we're going to, again, wipe off the extra water, go ahead and swirl. I'm going to just roll with yellow again. Put down my wash. Okay, now we're ready. We're going to choose our next color. So I've started with the light. We're going to rinse my brush off, wipe off the edge, and we're going to grab a paper towel and squeeze out some of the water. Now, you will need a teeny bit just to activate the watercolor, but you don't want, when you like paint on your hand, you don't want any like trails of water left behind. So now we're going to start with our darker color. I'm just going to roll with blue because why not? Because your brush is dry, you're probably going to need to swirl it a few extra times, so don't be too afraid. Okay, and now with a dry brush on top, your paint should not mix. There you go. Now my brush was a little too dry. I got some streak marks in here on the edge, but you can just go over that another time or two. Now, if you paint and your colors start to mix, it means that your brush was a little bit too wet. So you need to go in, squeeze some more water out, and you should be able to paint on top, and it should sit right on top. So I'll give you a second. Go ahead, pause the video, try your dry brush, and meet me back here. Awesome. So congratulations, you've learned your first 3 watercolor techniques. So using these, you can go ahead and start painting. In my next series of videos coming up, I'm going to show you some ways that you can combine other techniques with these to make your first paintings. So thanks for joining. Stay tuned. We're going to have more techniques and more videos coming up.